Welcome to the Easier Way to Sell presentation of Close the Deal Without Selling. Here's your host and developer of the Easier Way to Sell, Ike Krieger.
Hey, this is Ike Krieger. Welcome back. I'm looking for another term other than jam-packed because I keep saying this episode is jam-packed. Well, this episode is jam-packed. The first segment, we'll be talking about how you can be more effective at pitching. 2, we're going to go over a conversation that I came in contact with in social media that talked about assuming the close. Those of you who've been with me for a bunch of these podcasts or know me from my training probably has a pretty good inkling of how I feel about the advice to assume the close. Third is a phenomenon that I'm facing in the Close the Deal Without Selling podcast about getting referrals. And this is not the first time this phenomenon has taken place. Fourth, I want you to go over this list that we'll be discussing about the steps you need to take before you go into your sales call. What you need to do before you begin. We also have a segment about increasing rapport, and we'll finish up with a great little open-ended question exercise. So, adjust your dial, adjust your earbuds, or adjust your ears, and let's get started. When I urge you to ditch your pitch, I'm referring to your traditional scripted sales presentation. I believe traditional presentations delivered traditionally are counterproductive. I believe you're delivering your pitch at the wrong time in the sales game. And until you realize that, you'll have trouble becoming an effective pitcher. Think of me as your pitching coach. Now, why would I call myself a pitching coach? The last time I looked at my business card, I was a sales consultant. How did I come up with pitching coach? Maybe it's a desire to align myself with a sport I really love. Maybe it's a throwback to a time in my childhood when I actually considered that there was a possibility of my playing pro baseball. Probably not. And maybe there's some connection between pitching, successful communications, and sales. What is the business term given to the act of delivering your message or product to a potential consumer or associate? Since my earliest years in the sales business, this act of delivering product information was referred to as the pitch. You were told to become the best pitcher you could be. Becoming good at pitching may not be the only way to be successful in sales. However, here's my opinion, and it seems to be shared by many, that decent pitching can make a significant difference in your sales effectiveness. Salespeople are constantly striving to perfect their pitch. Managers not only pitch clients, but find themselves kind of in a sandwich, pitching to their subordinates and their superiors. When someone goes on an interview or asks for a raise, what are they doing if not pitching themselves? What do politicians do if not pitch their constituents? And if memory serves me, pitching woo was the way my dad used to describe his early dating pitch. Children pitch their parents all of the time. Think about all the angles your kids use on you to try and get their way. Think of all the angles you used on your parents to try to get your way. Some pitches were successful, some were not, and you sure could tell either way. When the pitch to your parents began to work, it was a victorious moment, and although at the time you probably didn't know that you were doing it, you were closing the deal and got your way. So here's my tip. Perfect your pitch, but don't throw it at everyone who comes near you. If you're a typical salesperson, you're tired of giving away valuable information for free or giving a great presentation to someone who is neither ready nor qualified to buy from you. Stop doing that. Save your best stuff for a time when you need it. You'll know when. If a client or prospect has decided that they trust you enough to allow you to help them solve their problem, that's when you can start to bring out the A material. Use your pitch to demonstrate how you can solve their problem. Use your pitch to close the deal. Until then, ask questions, listen, and qualify before you waste yet another great pitch on someone who's not even in the game. I just read a sales advice article that coaches the readers to assume the close. Now, I know you can't see me, but if you could, I'd be pulling my hair. What have we been told our entire lives? Don't assume anything. You see, when you assume the close, you create an internal dialogue that leans to your benefit before a benefit becomes part of the client's world. Your benefit has cut in line. Now, there may be a way to reframe assume the close so you can keep chugging along with great vigor without setting yourself up for a fall. As those of you who are familiar with the easier way to sell know, it's perfectly all right to have a positive outcome and maintain that outcome throughout the sales call. Your outcome, though, is to create a pathway to yes while uncovering a no that was going to happen anyway. If you end up comfortable enough to journey down that path, you've increased your chances of effectively solving the problem of this particular prospect. I believe that a firm close can never happen until the prospect concludes on their own that your product or service will solve their problem. That's a difficult mindset to assume. However, that outcome must be maintained. That outcome is one of solving other people's problems. With this system, it's important to remember that when you solve your prospect's problem and get compensated for it, your problem gets solved also. So here's my coaching. Avoid assuming the close. The only closes that I can assume are that if you're selling door to door, somewhere between 4 and 8 doors out of every 10 will be closing on you. To refer or not to refer? That is the question. I experienced this phenomenon from the mid-1990s until I retired in late 2010. And here I am back doing something I love, and the phenomenon has resurfaced, and let me explain. It seems when someone learns the easier way to sell and uses it in their day-to-day operations in their business or their life, they'll close more sales than their counterparts who are using the more traditional way to sell. I ask these satisfied trainees and clients to send me referrals. You know how important referrals are to the success of a business. When I was running my piano tuning operation, referrals were welcome and abundant and made a big difference in the bottom line. That's not been the case with my consulting and training business. Understand, I'm not complaining. As I said, it's a strange phenomenon. When I would ask students and clients why they paid so little attention to my request for referrals, they would reply, I know how great this system is and I know how much it's helped me, and I want to give you referrals, but your training has put me on the top or near the top of the leaderboard ever since I started your program, and if I told people in my office about your training, there may be people who would do better than I am, and I'm reluctant to give up my position on the leaderboard. That is the honest truth. That's exactly what they would say to me. And it continues. I got a letter this week explaining why a listener didn't feel comfortable referring the podcast to friends and colleagues. That explanation was exactly the same. Can't do it. Don't want other people to know about the selling system. I get it. I'm not happy about it, but I get it. What's wonderful this time around is if you listen and find it helpful, I'm pleased when I get a referral. But I no longer have any skin in the game as to whether you refer me to someone or not. I guess that's the beauty of doing this podcast because I want to rather than I have to. I'm in a position where I'm able to give up the need to sell. However, I'm more committed than ever to getting this system to you and getting it in place all over the world. And I could use your help. This week, I'd like you to refer the podcast to a minimum of 2 people. Please tell them that if they like the podcast, all I request is that they refer 2 people, and so on. Plus, whatever provider you're using to listen to your podcast, please rate and review each completed episode. That way, the provider can see your interest and promote Close the Deal Without Selling to a larger audience. Now that I'd like. So thanks in advance for your referrals and your reviews. Okay, a little housekeeping reminder. When you've completed this episode, I'd like you to go to LinkedIn, go to our page at Close the Deal Without Selling, and follow us. And if you'd like to follow me personally, please go to the LinkedIn page for Ike Krieger. Also, follow us on Facebook. Be able to let you know what's going on, okay? This next segment is based on a page in your action guide entitled Before You Begin. When I was still consulting, this is the list I instructed my clients and trainees to review before entering a sales call or taking part in any type of non-personal conversation. It's very helpful for personal conversations also. First and foremost, I reminded my protégés to ABC. No, not that ABC. This ABC is always be clear on your outcome. And remember, maintain your outcome, not your position. Here's the drill. Write out your answers. Ask yourself, what is my outcome? And as we learned in the structure of results exercise, state that outcome in the positive. How reasonable is my expectation? Is it achievable? What steps will I follow to achieve my desired outcome? What problems might I solve for these prospects? What is the purpose of my communication? Who should I be talking to? What questions will I ask? How will I remind myself to listen to the answers? In what way do I expect this person to respond? There are a few more system-related questions that you might want to ask yourself, but all of those are included in your knowledge of the easier way to sell and the YES formula. So, do your homework, study these things up, write these out before you go into a call to keep yourself clear. These will be your outcome. And it's not like I haven't said it enough already, but maintain your outcome, not your position. One of the easier way to sell guidelines is establish rapport and relationship. You can never have too much rapport. Any communications tool that helps the rapport needle move higher gets a big thumbs up from me. But I've talked to some of you who believe that if you mirror and match a prospect, they will view it as mimicking. Now, if you think mimicking when you're mirroring and matching, your efforts will fail. Think approximation. People like people who are like themselves. Meet them at their model of the universe. Look at their movements like a modern dance versus a strictly timed waltz. If they're sitting forward in their seat, you should at least sit up. If they're constantly touching their left ear, you can casually touch your left cheek. Less is more. Now, if you want to see if this works, mismatch on purpose. Watch what happens. Now, when it comes to rapport, observe your own rapport meter go up the next time you meet someone and discover their hometown or their high school is your hometown or high school. That is immediate rapport. That is instant rapport. But if there is no rapport at all, you can mirror and match your brains out and it probably won't make a difference. Rapport and relationship are increased in different ways, including discovering on which channel your prospect prefers to receive information and then broadcast on that channel. This stuff really works. And there has to be some positive personal chemistry between you and the prospect for this communication to function as planned. In your action guide, you'll find an exercise entitled Sensory-Based Words. This next segment is based on that exercise. Different people communicate using different words. And by understanding the different ways of communicating, you can be better understood and you can understand better. Every individual has different thought and speech patterns, and to communicate most effectively with each individual, it's critical to recognize and relate to the different patterns. The best way to identify an individual's preferred pattern is to listen to them speak. Pay attention to the words they use. As we've discussed in previous episodes, there are 3 primary communications patterns. There's visuals. Visual people prefer sentences like, I can see what you mean, or what are you trying to show me? Visual people like pictures and graphs. Then you have auditory, like me. Auditory people like to hear stuff. We like explanations and would rather not read a lot of material. We say things like, I hear your argument, or, I said I would like to, or you don't listen to me. And third is kinesthetic. And kinesthetic people prefer action and tactile situations in their communications and will say things like, I sense that you are uncomfortable, or I feel for you in this. And all people use all 3 ways of communicating for thinking, talking, and learning. However, different people have different preferences. Think of it this way. You use both of your hands, and yet you have one that you prefer, one with which you're most comfortable. Understanding a person's preferences will help you communicate more effectively. Now, a visual might say, I see what you're saying. That looks good. That idea isn't clear. I'm hazy about that. I just went blank. Let's cast some light on this subject. Let's get a new perspective. I view it this way. Looking back on it now. Now, an auditory would say, I hear you. That rings a bell. It sounds good to me. Everything just suddenly clicked. Listen to yourself. That idea's been rattling around in my head. Something tells me to be careful. I can really tune into what you're saying. And a kinesthetic would say, if it feels right, do it. Get a handle on it. Do you grasp the concept? A solid understanding is important. I'm against the wall. I need you to change your standpoint. You're so insensitive. I have a feeling you're right. Now I'm going to read a few statements for you, and then you decide if these statements are visual, auditory, or kinesthetic. If you're looking at this page in your action guide, again, look at these sentences and place an A for auditory, a V for visual, or a K for kinesthetic besides the statement. First, is that a cry for help? Auditory. Boy, is this workshop a drag. I'm having a hard time staying awake. Kinesthetic. Hey, have you heard the latest? Auditory. What are you trying to show me? Visual. I don't think you get the picture. Let me show you one more time. Visual. My sense is that we are in a difficult area. Kinesthetic. Can I bounce this off of you? Kinesthetic. Listen, I said I would do it. Didn't you hear me? Auditory. Listen to the words of others during the day and then meet them at their model of the universe. Once you find out if they're auditory, visual, or kinesthetic, you know the set of words that you can then use to meet them at their model. Remember, find out on what channel someone is communicating and then broadcast to them on that channel. There's an exercise in the action guide called Shift to an OEQ, and the intention of this exercise is to practice shifting from closed-ended questions to open-ended questions. To make a shift to open-ended questions, you must make a conscious shift to open-ended questions. Open-ended questions open up a conversation. Closed-ended questions close a conversation. Open-ended questions stimulate a conversation unless or until rapport has been established. Open-ended questions help build rapport. Closed-ended questions are most effective in an environment where rapport already exists, where you can say to a family member or your wife, do you want to go to this restaurant tonight? Not, what restaurant would satisfy you the most in this situation? What restaurant do you want to go to? Here are some closed-ended questions, and we're going to shift them into open-ended questions. And remember, how you form your questions is crucial to your success. Here's the closed-ended question, can I help you? An open-ended question would be, what can I do to help you? Or how can I help you? Closed-ended question, can you explain the process? Open-ended, how does this process actually work? Closed-ended, is there anything else we can do? What else can we do? Closed, was there anything else you could have done to make this work? Open, what else could you have done to make it work? Closed, can I help with this project? Open, in what way can I help with this project? Is there an alternative? Is closed. What's the alternative? Is open. Can you explain that further? What else can you tell me about this? Closed, will you tell me how you feel about it? Open, how do you feel about it? Closed, can we change something to make this work better? Open, what can we change to make this work better? Tear apart every question you're asking during the day. Stop yourself if they're not open-ended. Shift to an OEQ. Okay, that's going to do it for this episode. We had a lot of segments, and I'd like to think that each one was more valuable than the one that preceded it. But you're going to be the judge of that, not me. Also, just wanted to give you a heads up that I'll be taking a break for a little while, but the podcast will resume in a couple of weeks. We've got some good interviews coming up and just overall good information for you so you can be even better at closing the deal without selling. And I look forward to helping you become a more effective communicator and, of course, learning the easier way to sell. This is Ike Krieger. See you next time.